character of war is changing, but its human stakes are not. Speed, software, autonomy, and long-range systems now shape the battlefield. Yet every choice still carries consequences for soldiers.
If there's going to be life and death decisions that have to be made and I have to be part of it, I want to make the decision. I want to be the one making the call.
That's Lieutenant General retired Neil Thurgood. His 37-year Army career started off with enlisted infantry service and combat aviation.
When I graduated from flight school, I asked to go to Korea, and they sent me to Korea, and I went to the 213th Black Cats, the unit my father commanded in Vietnam, and I flew the same tail numbers he flew in Vietnam.
He later pinned on 3 stars as an Army officer, stood up the Rapid Capabilities and Critical Technology Office, and got a PhD before leaving the military to join Anduril, a leading national defense company. That's a lot to accomplish in one lifetime.
And I've always been a big advocate of not using the word balance when it comes to your professional life. I think it's the wrong metaphor. What I've tried to use is the word harmony.
But was that always so easy to achieve?
Some days are less glorious than others. And sometimes you just have to fight through the battle of the day. Enjoy the shuck, hug the cactus, enjoy the pain of what you're doing, realizing that if you don't do it, who else is going to do it? If not you, then who? And if it doesn't get done, the risk of that is a soldier's life. And that's how I see it every day.
Now, he's helping to build the future of defense from the outside in. It's a world where our adversaries move at the speed of software, and the threats of tomorrow are being coded today. General Thurgood's background has prepared him to help guide thinking on how the Army can adapt without losing the values that define it. Every day, he strives to answer this question: how can technology serve those who fight? In today's episode, our hosts sit down with General Thurgood to discuss leadership under pressure, learning through failure, and why speed and acquisition is ultimately about giving soldiers a chance to come home. I'm Carrie Varuhaikis, and this is Army Matters.
Okay, you ready, Dan? I got 13 minutes. Okay,
let's go.
Yep. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to your favorite podcast, your favorite 2 co-hosts, Army Matters. I'm Lieutenant General retired Leslie C. Smith, the 66th Inspector General, and I'm so glad I'm here with my good friend, my best buddy,
the 15th Sergeant of the Army, Dan Dailey, retired. Are we favorites out there? You think we're favorites?
I think a lot of people like us. I think we have quite a few downloads, but guess what? We always want about 10,000 to 20,000 more. What do you think, Dan?
We deserve a gold medal.
Like a platinum record. Wow. Okay. Anyway, I digress. So Dan.
Yes.
Dan.
Yes, sir.
Did you watch the Super Bowl last weekend?
Of course. I mean, if you don't, it's un-American to not watch the Super Bowl.
I agree. Even if your teams are not there,
it doesn't
matter. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah. So I watched it last weekend too. And here's the second question.
Yeah.
Did you used to watch the game wherever you were stationed?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a big deal. Big deal overseas. If you're not on an operational task, but you watch the Super Bowl. Actually, and in Iraq, you could get 2 beers during the Super Bowl. So
what?
For our listeners out there,
real beers or the fake beers?
No, the real beers.
What?
Yeah. And for our listeners out there, there's no drinking. U.S. soldiers, you are not allowed to drink while you're deployed, right, to a combat zone. But for the Super Bowl, every soldier got to drink 2 beers. It was a big deal.
And what about those soldiers that didn't drink? Did they give them to their buddies?
I can't say.
Confirm or deny.
I can't say.
Okay, so here's the next question, Dan. What was your favorite duty station?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm going to say Fort Carson, Colorado.
I was going to say Carson for you. You want to know why?
Because I spent 11 straight years there.
And you seemed so happy when I saw you there, like so chipper. So, well, you were the Division Sergeant Major, so that helped a little bit. But you said 11 years.
Yeah, I got there right before the Iraq War started. So and then I deployed every other year.
What was your rank then?
I first deployed as a first sergeant, and then my last deployment was as the Division Sergeant Major.
Yeah, with our good friend General Perkins. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my favorite duty station was Daegu, South Korea.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Most people's like, what? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Because we took our whole family. It was just coming out of Command General Staff College, and it was, fresh and new. But the reason why it was a phase assignment, if you remember in Korea, they had a lot of what we call cadre units.
Yeah.
Right? So people showed up once a year to do training. Yeah. So we turned the chemical battalion.
And what year was this? What year was
this? This was 1997.
Okay, 97.
What was your rank in 97, Dan?
I was a staff sergeant.
Staff sergeant. Man, thank you.
And I was in Korea. I was in Korea too. Yeah.
But you were farther north than I was. You were in the DMZ.
I was in Tongdashong.
Yeah, Dongdashong. Yeah, I was in Daegu. And so we transformed that battalion from being a cadre battalion to grow to 5 companies stationed all around South Korea. And then I had my family there too. So it was great. We had a lot of fun, a lot of things there. So
I like Korea too.
Yeah.
You're a family because nobody has their families there. It's kind of like being deployed, but you have barracks and
but it's a family.
It is.
And,
yeah. Normally I can figure out through the
what we're talking about.
Ask. Yeah. But I'm bewildered today. What are we talking about?
Well, thank you for asking, Daniel Blue Eyes Dailey. So today's guest has been to several duty stations like all of us. When he was a child in Germany, and through his Army career that began as a soldier, then a non-commissioned officer.
Oh, I like him already.
Ending up with 3 stars and a PhD.
Yeah, that's rare.
Half like me and unlike us. So we're going to be talking today with Lieutenant General retired Neil Thurgood. He's an expert in innovation and deterrence over at Anduril. And he did a lot of great things for not only the Army, but for the Department of Defense, now the Department of War. And he's here to tell us about that. Do you want to welcome him?
Please. General Thurgood, welcome to Army Matters.
Welcome, Neil.
Thanks for having me on the show, and thanks for what you're doing for our soldiers and their families.
So, Neil, what is your favorite place to travel to, and where is your favorite duty station?
Like you and the Sergeant Major, we've traveled all over the world. To me, we enjoyed our time here in the U.S. As well as overseas, but there's nothing quite like being here in the U.S. My time at the Naval Postgraduate School was pretty nice.
Nice.
I have to say, being out of Monterey is not a hardship tour. Mission-wise, it was certainly with the operational units, right? I spent a bunch of time with the 160th at Fort Campbell, and then even my time when I was a young enlisted soldier. I enjoyed that time under some great leadership of some great NCO. So those are really, really fun times.
So Dan, he can't tell us what he did in 160th.
No?
It's G14 classified.
G14 classified, yeah.
It's all good stuff.
It is all good. So let's jump into your inspiration to serve. So tell us a little bit about your life growing up and your connection to why you wanted to serve. Something about a story at the age of 13 at Checkpoint Charlie.
Yeah, super interesting. I grew up in a military family. My father was a career enlisted and career officer, just like my career. I'm a big fan of being enlisted and getting that opportunity to get that experience before becoming an officer. And so I followed the footsteps of my father. I remember 2 experiences that were really important to me. One was in 2nd grade at Fort Benning. They had a family day. And back in those days, they actually would take the families on helicopter rides. And I remember getting in a Huey with my dad and my mother and my brother and my sister and thinking, this is really cool. I'm going to do this one day.
Nice.
and I remember that very vividly. And so I grew up with the spirit of service. I grew up with the idea that there's something bigger than just showing up to work every day. And then as a young man, I think when I was about 13, my father was stationed in Germany. He was the UCOM J3 at the time. And we went to West Berlin, and then looked at East Berlin. And I remember standing on Checkpoint Charlie. It's clear in my mind as I can see you today. And I remember standing on that little wooden stand they had in those days, looking across the fence and looking how unhappy and how downtrodden those citizens were. And I said to myself, it can be better than this. And whatever makes it better than this, that's what I want to be part of.
Wow, that's so cool.
And it really left a deep impression on me.
What year was that?
I think it was like in 72 or 73.
Amazing.
And then the last thing I'll just say is, and you guys probably remember this, on military posts, before they had the movie, they would always play the national anthem. So you go to the theater and you stand up and do the national anthem. And I remember as a young man in Germany with my father going to the theater, watching my father get up, and he served 2 tours in Vietnam. I remember him crying in the national anthem. And I'm like, how can that possibly be? Like, he's like an airborne ranger killer. And I didn't appreciate it until, a few years later now, I'm that guy. I hear the national anthem, I can't hardly take it because of the emotion and the passion that you put into a career of service over your lifetime.
Yeah. First, I want to start off, sir, by saying thank you for your service and the service of your father. That's incredible. And the stories you just told hit home with me as well. But what else hits home with me is the fact that we started our careers off the same. And I'm proud to learn that you are a young enlisted infantry soldier. And can you tell us, how did that shape your career as both an infantry soldier and an officer later on in life?
Yeah, thanks, Sergeant Major. I've told this story a few times. When I was at basic training, I went to basic training at Fort Knox. I was an E3 because I had a little bit of college credit already. And Sergeant Ogg and Sergeant Clough were my platoon sergeants. And everybody that goes to basic training remembers their platoon sergeants. And they were, Sergeant Clough was a Vietnam guy, Vietnam veteran. Sergeant Ogg was a little bit younger. But we were standing out there one day at, practicing our infantry skills, putting up tents and shooting at the range. And we're on a little break. And I remember Sergeant Clough said one day, we're just standing there, and he goes, "Hey, who wants to be an officer?" And this is before I know you didn't really raise your hand in the Army. Don't volunteer. But I was a young private, so I raised my hand, and I said, "I want to be an officer." And he said, "Well, Thurgood, why do you want to be an officer?" And I said, "Sir, because if there's going to be life and death decisions that have to be made and I have to be part of it, I want to make the decision. I want to be the one making the call." And so probably instilled that from my father and his leadership of our family and his own professional career. I knew even when I enlisted that at the end of the day, I wanted to become an officer and lead our young men and young women.
And you also were in a similar position as me when I first joined the Army as young private. You were an RTO for your lieutenant. Do you remember anything special about that time, being an RTO? I have a funny RTO story, but I want to hear yours. Yeah.
Well, tell our listeners what an RTO is.
A radio telephone operator. So usually followed the lieutenant around on the battlefield with a radio on their back. Probably during the general's tenure was probably a Prick 77. Am I right, sir? Yeah.
Yes, it was.
A PRC 77. That's just an acronym for the radio at the time. It was a basic FM non-secure radio. So
that means it was old.
It was old. Yeah. But share us. Do you have any funny RTO stories, sir?
First of all, the RTO, not only do you have to carry the radio, but you got to carry half everybody else's stuff too.
Yeah.
So your rucksack's always really heavy, which is super great. I had some great NCOs that were platoon sergeants and section sergeants, and I had some great platoon leaders over the years. One of them was a guy named Jane Conway. He probably doesn't even remember this story. It was one of those moments in my life that was a tipping point, but for him it was just another patrol. Mm-hmm. And we were out on the range, and like all good lieutenants, maybe not as accurate with the map as he wanted to be. And we're under the poncho with our red light in the rain, looking at the map. And Lieutenant Conway goes, "Hey, I think we're right here." And I'm saying, "No, sir. Look, I've been out here a few times. Here's where we are, right here." And he goes, "No, I think we're here." And I remember thinking to myself, I could do this job. Lieutenant Conway encouraged me to press myself and do better things. But I remember that night under that poncho thinking, okay, we can do this better. I can at least navigate myself on a map. Super funny.
Well, I'll share the quick story, and it'll be really quick, sir. So I was an RTO too, and to your credit, usually RTO is one of the strong soldiers because you're with the lieutenant, right? And we were in Desert Storm, and my platoon sergeant was a Vietnam vet, Sergeant First Class SIBO. And I had the long whip antenna on because we were way out in the desert. And every time I went near Sergeant SIBO, who was a Vietnam vet, he said, "Get over there by the lieutenant. Don't get next to me," because for our listeners out there, during Vietnam, they targeted the lieutenants and the RTOs, right? So he knew from experience that he didn't want that radio next to him. But it's a humbling experience. Like you said, you end up carrying everybody's stuff. But thanks for sharing that story, sir.
Yeah,
Bless back to you. Yeah.
So Neil, how did your RTO experience inspire you to give soldiers the best equipment?
I'll give you a really simple example. In a CH-47, which is a great aircraft to fly, there's a hydraulic pressure system that helps you start the engines and starts the auxiliary power units. And if you don't do the sequence in the cockpit correctly, you actually release the pressure prematurely, and then you can't start the engines. And then there's actually a little handle in the back of the aircraft. You have to pump it up back to 3,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. And if you're the pilot and you dump the pressure, then you got to get out of the cockpit because the crew chiefs are just harass you to no end. You have to get out of the cockpit, go pump the thing, and get back in the cockpit. And I'm like, why don't we just put an electric pump on that thing? It'll take 10 seconds instead of 3 minutes, and off we go. So little things like that, really things that make a soldier's life and a leader's life a little bit easier, a little bit better, are really at the heart of the passion that drives me. Whether I'm in uniform or whether I work here now, for Anduril, it is about the passion, about getting up every day going, what can I do to give them opportunity to come home?
I'm told that your family has a deep-rooted legacy in aviation. How did that impact your service first in the Chinook family?
Well, it started, again, back with that kind of early childhood memories of flying in a Huey, thinking that was so cool. I'm going to do that one day. And then with the legacy of service that our family has. So, my father served along with my mother, who just served just as hard as my father did, and our families do. I have an older brother who was on active duty, got out when he was a captain, joined the reserves. He's a transportation corps officer, so he served. He later retired as a 2-star in the reserve system.
Okay.
My sister does special education, so she's lived a life of service. And so for our family, it was a natural outcome that I would follow that same outcome. And it's really where my passion has been.
So tell us quickly about how does it feel when your dad pinned your aviation wings on your chest?
Yeah, so it was pretty special. He pinned on my airborne wings, when I graduated from airborne school, and he pinned his flight wings on me when I graduated from flight school. When I went to flight school, they said at the end of flight school, where do you want to go? Where do you want to fly? And I said, hey, I want to go to Korea, and I want to fly Chinooks. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Because my father spent a lot of his time in Chinooks, in commanding Chinooks in Vietnam. As a matter of fact, in 1967, he was part of the 213th Black Cats, which is a Chinook unit, flying A-model Chinooks in Vietnam. When I graduated from flight school, I asked to go to Korea, and they sent me to Korea, and I went to the 213th Black Cats, the unit my father commanded in Vietnam, and I flew the same tail numbers he flew in Vietnam. They were then C-model Chinooks, C+s actually, but same tail numbers. And so that passion really is deep-rooted in our family.
Tell us about the decision for you to go from being a full-time aviator to become an acquisition corps officer. How did that happen?
It was really, really pretty simple. I was sitting with a great leader, retired now Major General Jeff Slosher. We were sitting on the USS America. I was in the task force at the time, a young captain. I said, hey, sir, look, I've been in the unit for a while now. it's pretty incompatible with where Neil and Shauna want to be as a husband and wife, and where we want to be as a family. I love it. It's a super mission. I don't want to go back to the conventional force. I want to stay here. And I said, but I can't balance those two things. And I said, when we come back to this mission, I'm going to give you my resignation and move on. And Jeff Slosher, General Slosher, I'm just a big fan of his. He said, Neil, you shouldn't get out of the Army. We need you. Have you ever heard of this thing called the Acquisition Corps? And I'm like, sir, I don't even know how to spell that word. I don't even know what that means. And he said, I said, before you do that, why don't you do another assignment? And I got off the USS America on a Wednesday. I took the GRE on Saturday, that same Saturday, and I was in grad school at Monterey about 70 days later. I went to grad school, went to CGSC, and then I went right back to the special operations to my first acquisition job. Worked with some great leaders and gave some great equipment back right to the people I'd just been fighting with. And so that really sparked a new passion, giving equipment to soldiers that has meaning and works. It's really important that our soldiers and all of our service members trust and have confidence in their equipment. And I'm always amazed that no matter how much we engineer a piece of equipment, a soldier will go, let's do this with it. And it works just fine. They're just super brilliant.
They are.
Yeah.
You just got to get out of the way.
You did something very important for our Army. You stood up the Rapid Capabilities and Critical Technology Office. Can you describe to our listeners, what were the challenges of that? And this is what a lot of civilians think. What are the challenges being in America? Why is it so hard to get technology integrated into our systems?
So the secretary and the chief asked me to stand up an office to do something different, to behave differently, to move at a pace that we haven't moved at since World War II. And it was a great experience, wicked hard job to do offensive hypersonic weapons, high energy laser weapons, things that are high-end technologies that our adversary had outpaced us while we were focused on the global war on terror. And so we've done a super job of getting that back in place. People often ask, so that passion to get things to our soldiers, it was part of that, and it helped drive me every day. One of the reasons I chose the company I came to, Anduril, was that same passion to do things fast. We just really need to change our behavior and our focus, and we can be successful. And you both have experienced that in the Pentagon in your previous lives.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that as a member of AUSA, you have access to many benefits? From car rental to entertainment discounts, the opportunities are ample. Visit us online at ausa.org/benefits to learn more.
Welcome back, everyone, to Army Matters. So, Neil, all these things we've talked about in your military career shape your view on leading organizations, making mistakes, and your leadership philosophy. So we want to talk here about hugging the cactus and embracing the suck. I know what that one is, but I don't know what hugging the cactus is.
Yeah, it really was shaped by the great NCOs I had and the great leaders I've had, and I've just been really blessed. I've had some great ones. Master Sergeant Henderson, who was my ROTC instructor, Ranger, that and left an indelible thumbprint on my forehead, about what good NCOs should be and how you should be as a young leader. The idea of that, hugging the cactus, is the same principle as enjoying the suck. Look, every day is not a glorious day. Some days are less glorious than others. And sometimes you just have to fight through the battle of the day, enjoy the suck, hug the cactus, enjoy the pain of what you're doing, realizing that if you don't do it, who else is going to do it? If not you, then who? And if it doesn't get done, the risk of that is a soldier's life. And that's how I see it every day. And in the defense industry in Anduril, that's how we see it. And one of the reasons I came to Anduril, the passion is get it done right, and get it done fast. and give the soldiers what they need. If they don't need it, talk to them and figure out what they need. Not every fight goes exactly how you want. Matter of fact, I don't think I've ever had one go exactly how I want. So you got to be flexible and realize that people wake up every day, whether they're in uniform or whether they're in Anduril, and they go, I'm going to do something good today. And you got to help them do that.
How did your military career shape your view on leading organizations?
I'll just tell you a quick story about General Slosher. It was a great leadership lesson of organizations. We were practicing a mission one night, just rehearsing, and we jumped in. I jumped in with a forward arming refueling point, a FARP, with my airborne platoon, and one of my soldiers broke his leg in the jump. So we did the right medical things, and we continued to execute the mission, put him in the right casualty evacuation point until we could complete the mission and then recover him as we would recover. And during the mission, it didn't go very well. The timing of the aircraft that were supposed to come in never happened. And so we were out there pretty exposed, trying to be prepared to receive aircraft, rearm and refuel them. And the mission changed like most missions. And it came time to leave the site. And so I knew the plan, I knew the route. And so I told my airborne platoon, okay, gather all the equipment in the middle. We'll put some thermites on it and destroy it, and we'll start walking out where we're supposed to be. They landed and picked us up, and we'd been out there for a few days, and I hadn't slept. I wasn't very good at fighter management as a young officer. And I got off the aircraft, and then Lieutenant Colonel Slosher, the battalion commander, was there to meet me. And I don't know what got into me that day, and I walked off the aircraft, and I said some things that I felt like we'd been left out there, with no radio comms and no knowledge of what was happening. Of course, I had no idea what the rest of the story was at the time, but I was a captain, and you know how captains are sometimes. And by all rights, he should have smoked me where I stood. But here's what he did as a great leader. He put his arm around my shoulder, and he said, Neil, go get some sleep and get some food, and we'll talk about it later. And said, good job to my soldiers, and then he left. That was a very, very powerful lesson about leadership for me. I've never forgotten it. And so no matter how bad it gets, everybody has a perspective, and you just got to kind of try to help them get through that. And sometimes we at the bottom of the pile don't have the same vision as the people at the top of the pile.
Yeah, sir, I'd like to ask you a question that I get asked by leaders all the time. I always tell people is 100% of us that join the Army are going to get out of the Army someday. And it's a big question I get about how to transition. So after 37 years of service, can you talk about what that transition was like for your path and why you chose the path, the how and the why, to where you are today?
Like you said, there is no future where you're only in the military, right?
That's right.
The future is you're going to retire.
Mm-hmm.
And so our family, and I learned this from my parents, we have always been engaged in the community, in our local churches. So the Army was a big part of our life, a major part of our life, but it wasn't the only part of our life. And so I think that whole of man concept where, you are more than just the clothes you wear, I think is really important. And so when you're in the military, you flex the professional part of your life. When you retire, you can flex other parts of your life. Life is a constant shift of tempo and the notes you have to play in harmony. So the idea that you have balance where everything is equal is probably not the right metaphor. It's I play the notes at the tempo I need to play in the jobs when I have them, and I play my family notes when I need to play them. And I think that is a closer realization of what happens in our lives. The second part of that is I stayed in the defense world. Because of my passion for helping soldiers, I didn't want to step away from, 37 years of experience into a non-defense related outcome. And then the third piece I'll say is, and I often reference this to people when they call and ask about how to transition. I didn't choose the job, I chose the company. And what I mean by that is I chose the value base, the integrity base, the passion base. What I came to Anduril for is because it matched the value base that I grew to 37 years practicing and believe in. And that value base was what drives Anduril every morning.
Can you talk about the difference of leading at the executive level at Anduril versus compared to your time in the Army and the Department of War?
I don't know less that it's particularly radically different. I think leading large organizations is about mission focus. I'm a great fan of General Nicholson, and he would use these words, and I use them in Anduril every day. As a matter of fact, I had a meeting this morning, and I started with this. Let's begin the meeting with a common understanding and a shared visualization. When people know, as you lead large organizations, you can't do the task. You have to lead the task, right? And the way leaders lead is with their own personal credibility, professional credibility, and experience and wisdom, but with sharing the vision of and why we're doing the thing we do. Whether you're making high-end autonomy or whether you're taking a hill, if you know why you're doing it, the chances of your success will go up dramatically.
Sir, what does conflict look like in the future, and how does that relate to the mission that you do at Anduril? What's different at Anduril?
So I think there are a couple of common things that are the future. One of them is that we're going to have to move a lot because we're going to be able to be seen a lot. So it doesn't matter where that fight is, we're going to have to move a lot and be seen a lot. The second is that if you are seen, you're going to have high destruction. So we have to give our soldiers equipment that is highly mobile and easy to use. And when I say easy to use, you can read that into that autonomous. The question is not how to replace humans with robots. It's how do you do it better with the combination of human and robots? And that's the Anduril way, right? It's not how do I take a metal task list and replace a human with a robot. It's how do I do the metal task list better by the combination of humans and robots? And how do I let robots help me do the task better? And we have to learn how to use the combination of the machine knowledge and autonomy to help us make those decisions at a pace that previously we haven't made at.
When I was a sergeant in the Army, I never used names of countries because my job wasn't to set foreign policy, but I can do that now because I'm retired. So China and Russia, that's what all the public hears. Your thoughts on them, and I'm going to give you a specific area because there's so many areas that you could focus on, and this podcast would last hours. But A2AD, explain to our listeners what A2AD is and how critical that is against our race to arms with China and Russia today.
Yeah, it's another great question. The A2AD, anti-access aerial denial capability, is what Russia's put in place around China and South China Sea to literally sense further and affect further from their homeland, right? From their homeland. So make it difficult for adversaries of China to get close enough to China to get a land battle happening, a land fight. And that's really challenging. We have to have weapons that can degrade the A2AD environment of China with precision and mass enough to create corridors and lanes that we can move in air and follow-on forces, ground and air forces, and surface ships to take the fight to the enemy at their home, right? We don't want a home game. We don't want that game to be in the U.S. And so the ability to take long-range hypersonic weapons, as an example, was to create lanes of great distance opening so that we could get follow-on forces and other assets in play to bring to bear the power of our nation, rather than being held at bay by an A2AD environment.
So what are some final takeaways you want listeners to leave this conversation about the future of technology and defense innovation?
So a couple of ideas I think are fundamental. First is that I believe the Army is on the right path to try to bring innovation in quicker. I think companies like Anduril are very good at that and are willing to take the risk if we believe and have conviction that the solution is usable for a soldier. If it gives the soldier an opportunity to come home, then Anduril is going to weigh in to do all they can to help that happen. We must accept in that process that the commercial world has tools we can use, and Anduril is very good at this, using commercial tools in a military way.
Okay, that's great. So last question. So what would you tell your 17-year-old self about what it means to serve? And talking to young people today, why should they serve our nation in the military or in a defense contractor or as a civilian?
So that last statement you said, Les, is really important. I would tell our young people, serve our government. Find a way to serve the government, whether it's in uniform as a government civilian or in a three-letter agency, serve our government. It gives you a passion for our nation. It gives you a responsibility for the outcomes of our nation, and it gives you the opportunity to serve. And there's lots of jobs in the Army, in all the services, right? You don't have to be, a helicopter person. You could be a cook if that's what you want to do. You could be a musician if that's what you want to do. You could be a veterinarian if that's what you want to do. There is, whatever your passion is, the service has the opportunity for you to serve in that passion. And I think that service aspect to our nation is critical if we're going to keep our nation as great as it has been in the past as we want it to be in the future.
So Neil, we want to just tell you thank you for what you're doing and what you did in service to our nation, and thank you for what you're doing in Anduril.
Well, listen, Les and Sergeant Major and the team that puts all this together, again, thank you for what you're doing for our Army in particular and our Army families. They deserve and need all the help that we can give them. And thank you for your service. And thank you for letting us continue to carry the flag in the water to help our soldiers and give them an opportunity to come home. And we bless them and hope they have the greatest success. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks so much.
To all our listeners, thanks for joining us. Army Matters is brought to you by the Association of the United States Army, the U.S. Army's professional association, member-supported, Army-connected. Visit us at ausa.org for more information or to become a member. Your membership helps AUSA continue to carry out its mission, educate, inform, and connect with the total Army, our industry partners, and supporters of a strong national defense. Today's episode was hosted by Lieutenant General Retired Les Smith and SMA Retired Dan Dailey, and anchor hosted by Carrie Barrow-Heckes. Andy Bosnack is the associate producer and supervising sound editor. Major Ryan Crane is the writer, and Ellen Toner is the content editor. Umzinga Curry is the executive producer. Carrie Barrow-Heckes is the senior producer, and Savannah Campbell-Smith is the producer. Be sure to subscribe to Army Matters wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave a review. As you know, we love seeing stars in the Army, especially if it comes in the form of a 5-star review. AUSA's Army Matters podcast can also be heard on Reach Across America Radio on Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern on the iHeartRadio app, the Odyssey app, and the TuneIn app with the search of the word Wreath. For questions or to provide topic recommendations, email us at podcast@ausa.org. AUSA's Army Matters podcast primary purpose is to entertain. The podcast does not constitute advice or services. While guests are invited to listen, listeners, please note that you're not being provided professional advice from the podcast or the guest. The views and opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect the views of AUSA. I'm LaSharon Duncan, hoping you have a great Army day. Hooah!